Last week, we went to the library, so to speak, and we had our Zoom presentation on using the library databases to find research. I want to talk a little bit about using your research as you will in your larger position argument paper. And the first thing I want to mention is that all of your research that you choose to use, because in your final paper, you have to use 5 sources. And using those 5 sources, I hope it goes without saying that those sources need to be integrated. This is just like integrating the evidence from your literary analysis. And you can use sources like when you're using them for your literary analysis, you can summarize, paraphrase, and use direct quotations. And just to recap, a summary sums up large pieces or main ideas. They're 1 to 2 sentences of your own words. A paraphrase rewords smaller pieces, more specific pieces. And of course, they also use your own words and structure, and they need a citation. And then finally, of course, you guys know that the direct quotations are word for word the authors, and that they all belong in direct quotation marks and need the citation. Remember that direct quotations need to be integrated into your work. They're not like the meat in between 2 pieces of bread, so don't just stick them in there by themselves between 2 sentences. Incorporate them into your own words. So now let's talk about what constitutes evidence. Because the sources that you're going to use are going to constitute the evidence for your how you're going to prove your claim. And anything that supports your claim is going to be considered evidence. Some examples would be statistics, facts, work from authorities. Now, there are 3 different ways to incorporate your evidence and when to do it. And you should incorporate evidence when it confirms or agrees with your argument, when it contradicts or conflicts with your argument, or when it contextualizes or provides background information for your argument. Confirmations. I want you guys to think about your 3 good reasons or your 3 proofs or whatever the 3 things that are going to constitute your body paragraphs are. I want you to consider what you are trying to say and what the evidence says. How do the words of others offer support? Not necessarily say the same thing that you do, but support your argument. Also, I know that you're wondering, well, why do I have to put sources that contradict or don't agree with me, Ms. Swan? The point is to prove my point, not get you to disagree with me. But part of making a good argument is looking at the other side, looking at the sources that don't agree with you or contradict with your claim or your position. And the reason we do that is because it helps make your position stronger. How do your sources disagree with your claim and your reasons? What concessions, we'll talk about concessions in just a second. What concessions can you make and how can you refute the opposition? Concessions. Concessions are when we recognize the opposing viewpoint and acknowledge that it has some merit. And what I mean by that is, so often we feel that what we say a lot of times, because we believe it, because we are convinced that our view is the right view, that there is no other viewpoint that makes sense to us. However, if you look at the opposition, there are reasons why there's another side or another argument to be made. If you look back at week 1, when we talked about the rhetorical situation, and look at the writer, everybody comes from a different walk of life, and what their background, their beliefs, their religious experiences, their own personal experiences influence their view of the world and influence their position on arguments. So it would be wrong of any of us to discount what someone else believes. We don't have to agree with it, but we can certainly respect their right to view the world that makes sense to them. I'm not saying that, they're always right or you're always right, but I'm saying that it behooves us all to kind of put ourselves in someone else's shoes. And that's what making concessions is all about. It's acknowledging that, hey, I might not agree with you, but I can see where you're coming from. For example, if you were writing a position paper or an argument paper, which you're not, because abortion is not something that you guys are going to write about. But if I were taking a pro-choice stance on abortion, right, I would have to look at why people are against that. And one of the strong reasons that that people disagree with abortion is because it's taking an innocent life. And I can't not agree. Yes, there is value in a human being's life. And I have to recognize that. And by acknowledging the merit of an opposing viewpoint, it helps establish some sort of common ground. And concessions are necessary for when you build your counter argument, and we'll talk about the counter argument next week. But it's important to acknowledge that other side and then refute it, okay? And then finally, when it contextualizes your argument. Evidence and support is necessary for background information because it's going to help you define the terms of your argument. What keywords or phrases does your audience need to know in order to understand your argument? How will you use keywords or phrases that your audience needs to know? What information, if I'm not familiar with your topic, what information do I need to know in order for your argument to make sense? It also helps kind of justify the relevance or the necessity for your argument. So you always want to provide that background information or the context of which your argument is going to be built. Okay. When using your evidence, it's all about structure. You want to make sure that you state your reason or your claim or whatever your point is in a topic sentence, provide the evidence, and explain how that evidence supports your claim. Spell it out for your reader. Connect the dots. We'll talk more about this in next week, but I wanted to mention it while we were talking about using your sources. And the other thing that I want to make sure that you guys think about, especially when moving forward and writing your annotated bibliographies, is that you represent other people's views, even the ones that don't agree with you, accurately. Don't put words in somebody's mouth because that makes you look like an unreliable, untrustworthy person. You want to be clear and you want to balance your logic with emotion. I wanted to talk about using your sources before you write your annotated bibliographies because I want you guys to look for sources that support you, or at least, support you or confirm your views, that the ones that disagree with you or provide opposition or contradictions, and then also sources that are going to provide some sort of background information, because those are the three places that you're more likely to use your resources. And rather than scramble to figure out which sources you can use where, I want to mention it before you do your research so you can look for those types of sources. Let me know if you have any questions or comments, and this will help you keep these ideas in mind when you're looking for your sources and writing your annotated bibliographies.